When people talk about AI in dentistry today, what do you think they're fundamentally misunderstanding?
It's how the people on the ground are actually going to take it up. Are they going to like it? Is it going to fit in with their daily routine?
AI isn't really an innovation project. At a certain size, it becomes an organisational design problem.
But then you're 2-3 practices in with staff who aren't happy. That's where it gets a little bit difficult. Yeah, it's dangerous.
Leadership teams often misdiagnose the issue because they blame the model, but the real constraint is usually data consistency and systems ownership.
Some practices on a server-based PMS system, others are cloud-based. And so that often makes it hard to see what it looks like at scale.
One uncomfortable truth about AI in dental groups that most leaders aren't ready to hear.
It's not quite ready yet.
This is the TechDental Podcast, the strategic intelligence hub for leaders shaping the dental industry. We break down how AI, data, and operating discipline drive performance and scale. I'm Dr. Randeep. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the TechDental Podcast. One of the biggest mistakes dental groups make with AI is thinking it's a technology decision. It really isn't. It's actually an organizational design decision. When AI is layered onto a fast-growing group without the right data governance, infrastructure, and communication systems, what you get isn't really intelligence. You get confusion, resistance, and technical debt at scale. Today's conversation is about avoiding that. My guest today is John Grainger, Data Protection Officer, IT and Communications Lead at Riverdale Healthcare. John sits at the intersection of data governance, infrastructure, and leadership discipline inside a growing multi-site group. This is not a tool discussion. It's about the intelligence layer that makes scale possible without chaos. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be on. Thank you.
When people talk about AI in dentistry today, what do you think they're fundamentally misunderstanding about the nature of change underway?
Two things. I think, firstly, the technology is still very new, and every single supplier, I get multiple a day, is saying, have you checked this new AI software out? Have you not seen this new product that we've got on the way? And it's all really cool stuff. But when you actually look at implementing it, it's how the people on the ground are actually going to take it up. Are they going to like it? Is it going to fit in with their daily routine? And yeah, so that's something when we've been exploring, introducing new stuff, that we've had to stop sometimes and go, oh, actually, how are the staff actually going to use this, if at all, if they just think this is causing me more grief than it's solving. So yeah, they're the two big ones for me.
From your seat inside a growing group, what tends to break first when scale accelerates and technology is layered on top without structural alignment?
It's exactly that. I think when you introduce technology into a business, you have to look at what is that going to replace something that you've got in place? How long is it going to take for certain people to adapt to that change? And once it's actually in, and once it's replaced that old thing, has it worked? Is it actually for the betterment? It could be. Sometimes we might come onto it, but sometimes we've done stuff where the data suggests that it is helping with what we wanted that to help with. But when we look at it on the ground, actually, is there a net gain to what we've done? And are the receptionists or the clinicians, are they spending more time trying to figure out the process or the technology than they are benefiting from it? So that's something we've learned and we'll continue to monitor when we introduce new stuff.
This is really the point that often gets missed because AI isn't really an innovation project. At a certain size, it becomes an organizational design problem. So what are the most common reasons AI initiatives or pilots fail in practice, specifically within a fast-growing multi-site group?
It's what you're sold by the supplier, and that's no detriment to the supplier, but it's the shiny product that they show you. And then it's what that actually looks like when you get the feedback from the team on the ground, and those little tiny bits that you weren't shown in the pilot of, that needs to connect to there, does it? And that's not compatible with that piece of software. Okay, that puts us in a bit of a grind. But then you're 2-3 practices in with staff who aren't happy. That's where it gets a little bit difficult. But yeah, I think that's the one. And unfortunately, to a certain extent, I can sit here and say, that pilot hasn't worked, but those staff on the ground, they've gone through it. They've actually had to experience that tech going wrong. And then that makes them nervous for the next pilot that might be up and coming. Yeah, it's dangerous, I'd say is the word. Might be a bit harsh, but I think it is a little bit dangerous.
No, I think that's quite apt, and you paint a vivid picture, because I think people often forget you focus on the shiny tech, and in isolation it's great. But yeah, you're absolutely right. On the ground, it can be dangerous because you're affecting not only staff, but you're potentially affecting patients, affecting the productivity of the business. So something which with the best intent at heart could actually cause a lot of damage. It's great that you paint that picture from an operator on the ground who's actually dealing with this at scale. How do you think fragmented data across acquired practices works against AI, even when the tools themselves are strong? Can you paint us a picture a little bit about how the data infrastructure works?
So, yeah, we do have this at Riverdale, and it's a case of when we have acquired practices, we might have left the tech that's already there. We might have left that already in. And when we're trying to introduce a new project, it's a lot easier to do it when everyone's on the same page. And if they're not on the same page, then we might have to miss certain people out at certain stages. For example, we've got some practices on a server-based PMS system, which makes it very hard to implement any AI technology right into the PMS, if at all. But we've got others that are cloud-based that we can quite easily integrate that different stuff in with. And so that often makes it hard to see what it looks like at scale and if it can be scaled. And like we've said, if we then need to look at, okay, so we'll need to invest in this software to be able to implement this here, and then we need to make sure that person is happy with that. And that is where it gets a little bit tricky. And even to the point of, say there's two PMSs that integrate with the thing that we want to integrate with, that's then two bits of data that we need to look at. Do they push out the data we want in the same way? So that's something that often you have to look at the productivity in terms of, I'm now checking two systems rather than one and getting two sets of data that I then need to merge. And I think, was it easier before I had all this? But yeah, so that's what we often need to look at.
That's really the dream of AI and tech, is it's meant to make life easier. But I think we're at this stage where, as it's still very early with AI in dentistry, people are still finding their feet. So I completely sympathize with what you've described there, because I think that's the realistic picture on the ground. And I think this is really where leadership teams often misdiagnose the issue, because they blame the model, but the real constraint is usually data consistency and systems ownership, as you've described. And that leads directly into governance, which is often understood as a blocker rather than an enabler. The role of the DPO is often framed around compliance and risk. In an AI-enabled organization, how should leaders rethink that role?
I think as the DPO, you need to look at how data is being used across the organization, who we're giving it to, are they abroad? There's all these things. And what we're finding with AI, a lot of these companies are really excelling abroad, the US, other parts of Europe. And we need to look at where our data is stored, what they're doing with it. Are they selling it on to anyone else? And all this is all a process that we have to go to and see whether that's going to work for us and whether we're happy with that. And a lot of the time, the answer is no, to be honest with you, or we put very stringent safeguards in place. But again, that eats into productivity and how long does this process take to implement this piece of software? And when we have to worry about all these things, is it an ongoing worry? One of the ones we've got at the minute, obviously, is AI note-taking software, so that, that the person's speaking into something. Have we got the patient's explicit consent? Do they know that they're doing that for every single patient that's being told in the chair? By the time you've discussed what the software does, have you then wasted the time it would have taken the dentist to write up the notes? There's all these little caveats to stuff where you go, oh, actually, yeah. And then some clinicians don't want to do it. And you have to say, oh, okay, then. I suppose, what else can we say? Yeah, again, and this is the one thing I will say is I don't want it to sound like I'm on a downer with AI. I really think it's fantastic. We are moving in the right direction. It's this funny bit we're in at the minute where all this stuff really, if we're honest with ourselves, it's still not figured out. We still don't really know.
I think you're absolutely right there. And that's one of the things that I like to have the conversation about on TechDental, is really not about the hype side of it, because there's plenty of that, but more the realistic side. And that's what I'm hearing on the ground. Exactly how you've extrapolated on that is that, yeah, it's very promising. and it's not quite there yet. I think in dentistry, it's interesting because it's such a people-orientated business. It's almost like we're coming up against how the AI clashes with the staff, the clinicians. And as you said, some people are not ready for that. And if a clinician says, but we're faster without it because we've honed these skills over years, you can't really argue with that. So it is a tough environment at the moment. John, in a multi-site group, which governance decisions matter most if AI is going to scale safely from your point of view as DPO?
I think that the biggest governance decision for me is who's got hold of our data and are they doing anything with it that we don't want them to do. We want a very simple governance procedure where we say, yes, you can have access to this data. Our patients are aware that this is the data that they're going to be using and this is what we plan to do with it. In our opinion, it should stop there really. And they shouldn't be able to do anything else with that data. We don't want them to. And we need to make it very clear. I'm a huge fan of just transparency and honesty about what we do. We need to make sure that our policies, both internal and external, are showing of what it is we want to achieve and with what tech. I want to be completely open with everyone in the organization, obviously patients included, about where we want to go and what softwares we want to use. It's important that all the internal stakeholders are a part of that.
What I find interesting is that strong governance doesn't really slow AI down. It's what allows the trust to scale before clinicians or patients even experience the technology. So I think it goes hand in glove. Governance only works if the underlying infrastructure can support it, as you've been describing. Infrastructure decisions made early in a group's growth seem to compound once AI enters the picture. Why do you think that happens?
I think part of the problem with scaling is, are the things that you're introducing going to still work when you're bigger and when you have more sites? And to be completely honest, I think that's something that I've been guilty of, is looking at what's going to help in terms of AI, looking at what sort of policies and what we can put in place that is going to help with this particular pilot with these 5 sites that we're trialing it in. And once you get to 10, 15, 20, you realize, okay, we don't actually have the infrastructure ready for that sort of scale, or we need to completely change the way that we now think of this in order to match that scale. So going forwards, I think that is something that I've learned and want to think about more, is taking the time to see, as we introduce this AI to this particular process, how is it going to help when we scale it up to 20, 30 practices? And these conversations are going on all the time of, if we were to roll this particular AI software out across the whole of the group, what would that look like? Who would it impact? Who would control it? Can the AI handle it? Is a big one. I think a lot of these suppliers are desperate to get all of your sites up and running on it. And then you have to really look at that and think, in practice, how does that actually look?
If leaders could only fix one part of the infrastructure before deploying AI, where should they focus first?
Staff buy-in or internal stakeholder buy-in. And by that, clinicians and the other dental staff. And then every layer of the organization, I think, needs to be aware of what this software can do before you proceed. And again, I've been guilty of this. Before you proceed too far in with the software that you're using, get the staff's input as you go along. So there's no group think, because we can sit in a meeting room and think, this is fab, this is going to be absolutely brilliant. But if you get someone, a receptionist in or a nurse, and just they go, actually, that's not the way we work at this site. And you go, that's we'll need to look at actually how, because everything that we do, we're doing for the benefit of the team on the ground. And if it's not helping them, then what's the point? But yeah, I think that sort of transparency and telling the staff what the plan is, getting them involved from the very start, is something that going forwards, I definitely think we're going to focus on.
AI doesn't forgive legacy decisions. It actually exposes them. When clinical AI is deployed properly, how does it change consistency across clinicians and locations, in your experience?
Consistency is a really difficult one with clinicians, because clinicians have a very specific way of working and what they want to use and if they want to use it. And we have it so that, again, let's take AI note-taking software, for example. Some clinicians don't want to use it, and we're not going to force clinicians to use it. So it makes it hard to have consistency in that sense, because everyone in that practice might not be using it. Now, I see our job as facilitating it so that dentist who doesn't want to use it then thinks, oh no, we can see the benefit here. I want to use that software now. That's the aim. But I don't think there's any rush with that. These things take time. And it's not limited to clinicians. There could be software that practice managers think for their practice, you know what, this doesn't work for us right now. This is what we need. We don't need that. And we have to go, okay, it's not going to help. But then we want to see, can we scale up? Can we use this software in some way that will help you? Yeah, so consistency is dangerous, isn't it? Trying to go for consistency. Sometimes it's not always the best way. I think that's a big one. We want to make sure that as part of our system strategy, we've got almost one supplier for each part of the business that we want to do. Getting the buy-in from each particular person who's involved in that is really important. But some stuff might not apply to some people within the organization, and you just have to accept that and just look at a way you can facilitate that with the software or make it easier for them to work within the remit that they want.
You touched on this topic briefly about clinician and staff buy-in. How do you prevent clinical AI from feeling like surveillance or second guessing rather than genuine support? Have you had any feedback from clinicians that have that kind of feeling that maybe AI is too intrusive or that they feel they're being almost like Big Brother?
Do you know what? Funnily enough, I haven't really heard that much pushback on that point, which did surprise me slightly because it's such a sort of, what do you say, a tenuous sort of thing, especially with patients' data. You don't want it to misdiagnose. What I found with a lot of the software at the minute is that they operate very heavily on these recommendations. Can you review this first before you make a decision on that? And I don't think I've come across a software, certainly not one that we use, that says it's definitely this and it's definitely that, because the clinicians, quite rightly, still need that control over the treatment that they give their patients. Yeah, pushback on that has been limited. I think with some software, it can sometimes be a case of if it's transcribed the notes that you've made from talking to the patient, sometimes it doesn't necessarily match what they've put in the notes. And there's some software that we're introducing about receptionist calls, and we can measure how they're performing. And they've got stuff measuring the cadence of them. How excited were they on the call? Were they nice to the patient? Things like that. And I'm very skeptical to use that to any extent at the minute, to be completely honest. We still want that sort of say over that. So I haven't noticed that much. And I think that's because suppliers are being very careful with it.
It comes again down to the culture, really, because I think any software really amplifies whatever leadership intent already exists within the organization. John, that's been a real fascinating take, and it's great to get your boots on the ground perspective from that. I always like to close our podcast with a quick lightning round of short, sharp answers. So sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay, I'll do my best.
What's one uncomfortable truth about AI in dental groups that most leaders aren't ready to hear?
It's not quite ready yet. Do you want me to expand on them? Sorry.
That was perfect. I love that. It's meant to be short, sharp answers, and usually I have guests go on for like 10, 15 minutes on it. So thank you for being succinct. So that's fine. The second one, what does good data actually look like in practice?
I think it's a mix of anecdotal feedback from the sites and what the hard data shows, and then seeing where you end up on a net, if that makes sense.
Finish this sentence. The dental groups that win will be the ones that
listen to their staff.
This has been a real crucial conversation. I think the key takeaway for leaders is simple. AI doesn't create clarity. It reveals whether clarity already exists. I think groups that treat AI as an intelligence layer, not a collection of tools, are the ones that will scale without chaos. John, where can people connect with you?
You can connect with me via email. My email is john@riverdalehealthcare.com. That's JOHN. I'm on LinkedIn, just as John Grainger. Yeah, they're the two big places I'd say you can come and get me. Yeah.
Fantastic. If this episode helped sharpen how you think about AI, governance, and scale, share it with your leadership team today. And if you want more conversations like this grounded in execution rather than hype, subscribe to the TechDental Podcast. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's been great.
You've been listening to the TechDental Podcast, strategic intelligence for dental leaders navigating structural change. If you're responsible for growth, performance, or long-term value in this industry, make sure you're subscribed. I'm your host, Dr. Randeep. We'll see you next week.